Hi guys, thanks very much for joining me today, and we're going to be looking at a piece of legislation which is known as Roe v Wade. We're bringing to an end our studies about feminism, about how women's rights changes in America in the late 1960s and early 1970s, and this is our final piece of work. It's Roe v Wade, so you need to have that as your heading. Now, prior to 1973, in the United States, abortion is heavily controlled, and it's essentially outlawed in many of the states of America. It's only legal in 4 of the states, it's highly limited in 16 others, and it's completely outlawed in pretty much all circumstances across the rest of America. Now, as a result of that, a lot of women are forced to have illegal and dangerous abortions, often conducted by untrained people and conducted in homes without access to medical facilities. So these are known as Backstreet Abortions. They're conducted away from hospitals. So having an abortion prior to 1973 could be a really dangerous medical procedure, and it would often result in long-term injury and could result in death. Now, I've left you a little bit of the description of an abortion from 1965 described by Adele Zimmerman, and she explains what's happening to her. So pause the screen and read that, and then carry on. Having read that, you should understand an idea why women want the law to change. This idea that abortion is dangerous, that it's resulting in the deaths of women, means that there is a movement to see the law change. And that movement is led by the National Organization for Women, and they campaign for women to have the rights for an abortion. They argue that women should be free to decide what happens to their own body, and they shouldn't be forced to have a child if they don't want to. And the law which changes women's access to abortion in America is known as Roe v Wade. So it's worth us understanding who Roe and who Wade actually are. So Roe was a name given to an anonymous woman. She was entitled to remain anonymous throughout this, so she was given the name Jane Roe. She was a 21-year-old woman who argued that she was entitled to abortion. Later on, it became known she was Norma McCorvey. And on the opposite side, we've got Henry Wade. He's a district attorney of Dallas in Texas, and he's representing the state government in legal matters. So whilst it's his name, it is essentially the government, but we know it as Roe v Wade. Now, lawyers argue that Jane Roe has the right to an abortion. She's come from a difficult childhood, she's already had 2 children, and they've been given up for adoption already. On the opposite side of the argument, the state of Texas, represented by Henry Wade, argue that she's not entitled to an abortion. Both sides can't reach an agreement, and they appeal the rulings, and finally it goes to the Supreme Court for an ultimate decision. And as you know, the Supreme Court is the highest court within America, so if they make a ruling, it's going to be enacted across the whole of America. And they rule that women have the right to safe and legal abortion, overriding the anti-abortion laws of many of the states. So the change that has now happened is women now legally are allowed to have an abortion across all states of America. They would now have abortions conducted by medical professionals with access to proper medical facilities. So I've put a table up in front of you now to help you understand this change. We've got before Roe v Wade on the left hand side and after Roe v Wade on the right hand side. It'd be useful if you pause the video now and copy that table down into your notes. Now, once you've copied that table, I've just shown you a timeline. We've seen this in previous videos, so we know where we are on the development of women's rights, how things change over the period from 1960 to 1973. So what I want us to do, I want us to have a look at an exam question, and it's going to be an 8-mark question. In what ways were the lives of women affected by the campaign for more equality in the United States of America during the 1960s and 1970s? Explain your answer. So it's an 8-mark question. We know we're going to have 10 minutes to answer that in the exam. We know it's going to take about 2 paragraphs because for every 4 marks, it's 5 minutes and a paragraph. Now, to answer this question well, you need to show knowledge and understanding of the period, and you need to be able to explain why some things change or why some things remain the same. You need to explain the causes of change and the consequence or the significance of that change. And when things have remained the same, you need to say why they're similar. Really important you do this, because if you can't do this in the answer, you're going to struggle getting the top marks. It's also important that you use point, evidence, explain as the format when answering the question. It helps structure your own thinking, and also the examiner is going to be expecting you to use this format. And finally, you need to ensure you include 2 ways that the lives of women are affected. Now, to help us today, I've given you an example paragraph, and we'll have a look at how the structure of that paragraph is made, so then you can have a go in another paragraph yourself. So let's read through the paragraph first. One way in which the lives of women were affected by the campaign for equality was the change to abortion laws in 1973. Following protests by the National Organization for Women and the case of Roe v Wade in 1973, the Supreme Court rules that women had the right to an abortion in America. This was a change, as prior to that point, many women had been forced to use Backstreet Abortions, which were dangerous and could result in women dying. These abortions were conducted in homes with no access to medical facilities. Following the Supreme Court ruling, women were allowed an abortion in safer medical facilities with medically trained staff. So let's have a look at that answer and see how it's been constructed. Now, I've highlighted for you in yellow the point. One way which women's lives changed was change to abortion laws. So that's the point that's going to be made in this paragraph. Now I've given some evidence, and I've talked about the National Organization for Women and the case of Roe v Wade. That's highlighted in green for you. And then finally, my explanation. Why is this affecting the lives of women? I've also highlighted in bold for you, this was a change. It helps the examiner see that you understand you're looking for changes in this period. So there's your example paragraph. Press pause, copy it down if you need to, but then I want you to try and construct your own second paragraph about another aspect in where the lives of women were affected by the campaign for more equality. So there you have it. That's Roe v Wade. You've got your assignment, you've got your exam question to do, and I've left you with this table just as a quick recap of how the law changed as a result of Roe v Wade. If you've got any questions, get in touch. Thanks very much. Bye-bye.